il nous reste que 5 minutes pour écouter les...
We only have 5 minutes for the concluding remarks, and so I'm going to hand over now to Viwanou.
Merci, Michel. Et
Thank you,
vraiment
Michel.
2 minutes.
Just 2 minutes, so that we'll go away with something to chew on from the presentations, the questions asked by participants, but also some idea of what direction we're going in and how what we're doing is perceived by those it's designed for. And on partnerships, I'm very grateful to whoever asked the question about SDG 17, because I think that that's where we can bring added value, the synergies that we can achieve together. There's a large group of us involved, but some of you will know that we're now discussing the post-Cotonou agreement, post-2020. And if you look at the EU's negotiating mandate and the ACP negotiating mandate, you will see that both are all tailored around the 2030 agenda. So altogether, we have a role to play. We have 108, 107, or 106 countries, depending on who you include or exclude. So more than half the countries in the UN represented in those negotiations. And we think that by acting together, we can make a sizable contribution. We also have the kind of fundamental debates, such as we've had today. I was saying to my neighbor here on my left that we need to maybe even rethink the terminology. Should we talk about food security and malnutrition, or should we talk about food security and nutrition? They're not the same thing. And the policies you would put in place would differ depending on which you talk about. We were talking this morning, too, about rethinking the management model. Maybe food security should be nutritional as well. So we're delighted to have had various sectors here. The private sector has an essential role to play, and we'd be delighted to enhance our partnerships with them. We have farmers prepared to play their part, but they can't do everything on their own. We've got to have the right instruments to help them and have the right management and institutional framework. So thanks to the organizers for having brought different colleagues together, and thanks to the colleagues for having come or for having been available online, and we hope to continue. Thank you very much indeed to the ACP countries and Secretariat for having agreed to play a part in this briefing. I'd also like to thank the 4 panelists, before I forget, of the second panel today, which has enabled us to discuss these very crucial issues. And thanks particularly to them for having given us concrete examples to illustrate what we're talking about. And finally, Mr. Michael Hailu.
Thank you very much, Michel. Well, my role is fairly simple. I just first would like to thank everyone, the chairs of the 2 sessions, for leading us through this fairly complex agenda efficiently and getting us to the end with some good conclusions. Well, as we said at the beginning, this is a very broad topic, and actually we're debating ourselves, how to try and narrow it down. So as you can see, it's been, I think we got a really good focus on a number of issues. I think from the discussions, the complexity of really tracking performance in terms of the SDG 2, how we look at the whole issue of the food system, and as opposed to just focusing on the productivity and so on. So I think a number of important issues came up. Of course, the complexity of the data, how do you collect the data? I think there was a lot of reference to the issue of coordination. It's clear that the devil is in the details. How do you collect data on different aspects? I think that's also the lesson that came from the biennial review of the Malabo Declaration, which we talked about earlier. There are very clear gaps, especially when the data is coming from different sectors. When the data comes from different sectors, it's really, you see a lot of gaps. So we can see that it's fairly complex to get a good picture of what's actually happening when it comes to different stakeholders providing the information. We talked about the need for capacity building at the national and local level so that we can really track progress and have much more reliable data going forward. And of course, the role of the private sector very clearly, and other stakeholders as well. It's not just governments, but a lot of the NGOs, the farmers groups, the private sector, and so on, to be able to achieve the targets in SDG 2 and also to provide, in terms of the information and the data that would allow us to track progress. So I would say that we scratched the surface on this topic. So we can run a lot of similar discussions, but obviously, we looked, as I said, very specific issues. What's happening on the ground, from the research perspective, as well as at the macro level, what's happening at the national level and so on. So I hope you have appreciated or you have found some valuable insight into this discussion. As I said, when we started, we were not really sure how useful such a broad coverage would have been, but I, for myself, found a lot of useful insights and data and information from our presenters. We are very grateful for that, and I hope you also have found the morning very useful. I'd like to thank, as I said, our speakers and our chairs, as well as my colleagues, the Brussels office, as well as colleagues from Wageningen who have joined us, and especially Solina. She has been running around, and her colleagues in Brussels, to put this together, to get all the speakers and so on. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of them for making this happen. Well, our next briefing will be, it's already on the screen there, so it will be on April 24th, and we'll be narrowing down a very specific topic next time. So it will be, as you know, digitalization in agriculture. Transformation is a key area of our work, and we'll be taking a specific theme of the blockchain for agriculture. So I encourage you to join us at the next briefing. And we invite you for a networking lunch. And again, thank you very much for staying with us throughout the morning on this important discussion. Thank you very much.